The evolutionists don't talk about that, the evolution of matter itself, which is why I very carefully divide the evolution theory into 6 logical, rational divisions, which it needs to be, and they don't like that. They want to lump them all together. It's just one big grand theory, and it's not one big grand theory.
First of all, Kent, the evolution of matter itself, how it behaves and what its physical properties are, is the job of physicists and chemists. Evolutionary biologists study how life developed, not how it first formed. The structure of atoms doesn't have anything to do with natural selection among species. You're conflating 2 entirely separate fields of study and pretending like they need to be studied together for the sake of intellectual consideration. It's like saying matter can't be made up of atoms because biologists study biology instead of chemistry. Well, yeah, obviously. And the reason we don't split something as enormous and complex as evolution into 6 distinct steps is because it's not that simple. Scientists tend to dislike simplifying complex ideas because it's deceptive in its nature towards those ideas. It tries to represent something that is by its nature complicated in a way that can be fully understood by anyone who reads a high school biology textbook. Evolution is not as simple as you think. And I shouldn't need to tell you creationists this over and over again, but evolution explains the diversity of life. That's all. It has nothing to say on the origins of life.
Let me see if I can summarize here. You are saying a lot of different creatures have the same broken gene. Therefore, that proves we all came from a rock. Is that the logical sequence I'm supposed to see here?
No, Kent, it isn't. Evolution doesn't say we came from a rock. Evolution explains how species evolve to their current standards. Life doesn't go from inferiority to superiority. It's simply a product of natural selection and the environment the organism is in. It's a means of making a species more suitable to its environment. If you believe that species with an advantage in an environment will survive better than those with a disadvantage, then that's your admittance that at least the base purpose of natural selection is correct. No sane human would deny the theory of evolution, because no sane human would claim that disadvantaged species survive better than those with an advantage.
I'm going to believe the Bible till it's proven wrong rather than doubt the Bible till it's proven right. But could it be that the collapse of this canopy at the time of the flood caused the same mutation to happen in all animals that have some similarities, like the dry-nosed primates?
The collapse of an ice canopy that surrounds all of Earth wouldn't cause genetic mutations. It would kill everything on the planet. For a man who claims to have taught high school science for 15 years and to have a PhD, which he doesn't have from any accredited institution, and which was of similar academic quality to a 7th grader handing in an unfinished book report he completed the day before, it's incredible that Hovind can say that with a straight face. The job of any true academic and any rational thinker, of which Hovind is neither, is to lack belief in something and form a belief only if sufficient evidence is provided. The Bible is not evidence, it is the claim. It claims there's a God, and has not provided evidence for one. Everything we can observe has a naturalistic explanation. Just because some of those explanations are unknown does not mean you can claim that your particular version of the same desert fairy tale must be true.
If an atomic bomb went off over Nagasaki or Hiroshima, and we later find out that the rats have cancer from radiation, and the birds have cancer from radiation, and the humans have cancer from radiation, wow, that proves we're all evolved from a common ancestor, in your line of thinking.
Exactly, Kent. It is all caused by the bomb going off over the city. Nobody is claiming that because nuclear radiation affects some animals the same way, that they are immediately related through some common ancestor. The evidence for a common ancestor comes in the form of the fossil record, which we are finding new pieces of all the time, the genetic and physical similarities between species, the fact that our genome is almost identical to that of chimps, and on and on and on.
I think a person can believe in God and support evolution. Well, hold it, Jack. You better define what you mean by evolution and what you define what you mean by believing in God. Do you believe God wrote a book called the Bible? Do you believe this is it, the What do you mean? Who is this God you believe in? If the God had to use evolution, is he stupid or retarded? Can't he just do it right first time? Does he need to practice and experiment? By the way, evolution is a really cruel process where a whole bunch of creatures have to be half formed and die because they don't fit, and only the fit survive. Is that the kind of God you'd want to worship? A God who would use such a stupid, blind process?
Evolution is not a stupid, blind process. Survival of the fittest doesn't mean the survival of whatever is superior by your standards, such as size, strength, or intelligence, but simply refers to the species that are most adaptable to changes in their environment. The fittest simply refers to species that can survive and thrive better in a changed environment than those species that cannot, and it is the logical progression that disadvantaged species will not survive as long or as well as advantaged species. This part of evolution could be explained by the basic logic anyone should be able to understand. Evolution clearly happened, and it is clearly still happening, so if Kent's God really is responsible for this, then he has just referred to his own God's divine plan as stupid and blind. This should show how Kent is simply talking about what he considers to be perfection, what he considers to be superiority, rather than considering that his own God might not agree with those standards, if his God existed, that is, which we can be pretty sure he doesn't.
The God that I worship did it right first time, perfect, flawless, and then man messed it up.
So God got everything right the first time? Everything was perfect by Kent's particular standards. People lived to over 900 years old before the flood, according to Hovind. I wouldn't consider such a long lifespan to be a sign of perfection. For creatures saddled with the burden of consciousness and self-awareness, 900 years would be incredibly long. Some people can't even stand the first 80 years without feeling the need to check out. And can you imagine every human who has ever lived living for nearly 1,000 years? This means that people who were alive in the year 1100 would still be alive today. Can you imagine that many people populating a planet that can't even sustain our current numbers of 7 billion? 7 billion people is already torture to some, myself included. Everywhere we go there are crowded trains, buses, shopping malls, zoos, cinemas, and we just keep building more, destroying more, for the sake of ourselves, unwilling to accept responsibility, to admit that we're the actual problem. Reproduction isn't a passing fad, it's ingrained into our psyche as maternal mammals, and we need to start getting over that for the sake of the other animals we share this planet with. And a species that reproduces the way we do simply would have already destroyed the planet if people lived to 900 years old. 70 to 80 years is only short compared to other things like mountains and stars, but for a species as destructive as us, 70 to 80 years is just fine. It's not our lifespans that make us dangerous, it's our tendency to breed like rabbits. 80 years might feel short, but in the end it's best for the planet, and best for the other animals that we are far more dependent on than we would like to admit.